Hello, my name is Diego, and this is my video for the evidence 2 about the solution for one of the challenges of globalization. In this case, I chose the addiction to the fentanyl in the United States. First of all, starting with the context of the problem, I would like to explain that fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. It is a very strong drug, and very people is getting addicted to it, not just in the United States, but in many countries around the world. It was originally developed for medical use as a painkiller, but now is being illicitly produced and sold on the black market as many people are demanding it. Some of the main problems caused by the addiction of fentanyl are overdose epidemic, increased availability of the drug, because of course there is more demand. There are creating some synthetic variants that are more dangerous, as you will never know what are they made from. And this problem, the addiction to fentanyl, has an impact on the communities and not only on the people who consume it, as similar to many other drugs. Fentanyl problem is in the United States represent a complex evolving challenge that just keep growing every year. Some data and statistics that show how lethal fentanyl can be. Uh, First of all, the number of overdose deaths involving synthetic opioids in 2020 was 18 times higher in comparison with 2013. Approximately more than 56,000 people died from overdose involving synthetic opioids such as fentanyl in 2020. It is 50 times more stronger than heroin, and a daily estimated of 150 people die from overdoses related to synthetic opioids like fentanyl. I think this data shows how big this problem how this problem is, and how much it can have an impact in the community of the United States and in all the countries that have this addiction pandemic issue. Moving on to the cultural point of view of this problem, as I was mentioning before, this is not only happening in the United States. The other countries that are experiencing a strong problem related to this addiction to fentanyl are China, Mexico, Canada, United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia. This drug is so addictive that it can affect people from all different social status, backgrounds, religions, and cultures. Talking specifically about the United States, as I mentioned in the beginning, fentanyl is originally created for pain. So many doctors in the US gave their patients fentanyl for a not so strong problem, and that's how many people got addicted. So this is not something that just vulnerable people get addicted to. It got to all the aspects of society, all the levels. Another problem related to traces is that it involved international drug trafficking. Nowadays, there is so much demand of fentanyl that there are countries specialized in producing this drug in order to traffic it to countries like the United States or Canada. And as I was mentioning, the level of addiction caused by fentanyl is a threat for everyone. As a proposal to this issue, I thought that it would be correct to promote a global campaign in which the population is informed about the fentanyl, what it is, its consequences, and where to seek for help. I decided to add the image on the bottom left. in which you can see a penny, which is 1 cent, and the little white powder that is at the right of the coin is the amount of fentanyl needed to die from an overdose. Just to be conscious about how lethal can this drug can be. The objectives of my proposal are to inform the population about how lethal fentanyl can be, as shown in the example of the coin, ways to avoid its consumption, and provide information related to where to find help in case you are or you know a consumer of fentanyl. Another objective is getting governments to regulate and improve laws related to drug control, and also to implement a stricter monitoring of fentanyl prescriptions. As I was mentioning earlier on this video, many doctors were giving fentanyl just for any simple pain. It's a very strong drug and it should only be prescribed for heavy pains. For the implementation of this strategy, these are the steps. First of all, we need to identify the target audience for the campaign. In this case, as I mentioned, it's all levels of society, but we can start with the most affected aspects of it. Then we need to conduct a research to gather the most relevant and impressive information related to the fentanyl addiction. I decided to use the word impressive to really show how bad this addiction is and to really get people attention when they read this data and to really create awareness about this problem. And then we need to choose the proper communication channels, either social media, newspaper, a billboard, the TV, the radio, or any other one. Once that point is covered, we need to develop the content of the campaign, involving all the information that was gathered during the research phase. Then we need to collaborate with strategic stakeholders to reach a bigger audience. I mean, what we would basically pay to have the campaign in the communication channels, but maybe creating alliances with schools or non-profit organizations could help the campaign get to more audiences without increasing the expenses of the campaign. Finally, the final step is to launch the campaign through the channel selected and the collaborations, and to constantly assess the impact of the campaign in different channels. This to optimize the diffusion and get to create a long-term impact on the society. The outcomes expected with this campaign would be to, first of all, increase awareness of the problem. By increasing awareness, the people who take the decision of consuming would logically decrease. With this point, we move to the next outcome, that is to reduce the number of deaths caused by overdose. If less people is getting to taste or to experience fentanyl for the first time, it is logical to think that less people is gonna die from it. But also, this campaign is looking to remove like the stigma created by society about people who consume drugs, so they can feel free and not judged to ask for help. Another outcome would be to have an increased number of efforts by the government and the organizations to address the problem. And finally, to generate a long-term impact reflected by the numbers of deaths. Obviously, this number should be going down every year. Some of the stakeholders involved in the development and implementation of this campaign would be the government, in order to create laws that can prevent and regulate the fentanyl use. Some community organizations, as I said before, to help with the diffusion of the campaign. Healthcare professional for both the research and the treatment. The research for the information for the campaign, and the treatment for the people who are consuming fentanyl and want to get help. the media platform basically as our main diffusion channel, and finally individuals and communities. They are involved because if you're affected, then you can know what to do, and if you're not affected by the fentanyl use, you will get to know how can it affect you and how to help others. The resources needed for this campaign to cure are obviously the funding. It's essential to cover all the costs associated with developing, implementing, and evaluating the campaign. The personnel, which would be experts and professionals responsible for the strategic planning of the campaign. And finally, we also need research and data in order to provide the correct information at the campaign. To finalize with this project, I would like to conclude that it is important to consider the cultural aspects of an issue, as I believe that when you consider those aspects, you are provided with a global vision of the problem, and by having a global vision of it, you are able to understand the problem as it truly is. When you see a problem for only your perspective or your cultural perspective or your cultural background, you may have bias that can affect your understanding of the problem, and therefore not creating the proper solutions for it. So in this case, I believe that having a global vision allowed me to truly understand the problem, eliminate all my biases, and with that, generate a proper campaign for my proposal to eradicate this problem. Finally, my role as a responsible citizen in a culturally globalized world is to understand that even if problems may seem local, they often have an effect in the entire world. Nowadays, we live in such a globalized planet that even when we might not see it directly, but all our actions have an impact around the world. From as simple as buying a phone, you don't know who produced it or where was it produced, and which were the conditions of the people who were producing those phones. So therefore, we need to be very conscious about our decisions in order to reduce our impact in the world. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and here are my references.